Blockbuster deal going down. Jaren Jackson Jr. finally traded after he's been in the rumor mill for a while to the Utah Jazz out of all teams. You would think he would get traded more to a contender, but the Jazz going for it a little bit. And next season, this roster looks really good for this Utah Jazz team. Jazz get Jaren Jackson Jr., John Conker, Jock Landale, Vince Williams Jr., and the Grizzlies, they get a big haul, mostly because of the draft picks. Walter Clayton Jr., who Utah drafted this season in the NBA draft. Kyle Anderson, who most likely a player they're going to waive. Taylor Hendricks, Georges Niang, another guy they might waive, and 3 first-round picks in this deal. So if Jaren Jackson got 3 first-round picks, including Clayton Jr. was a first-round pick as well. Giannis, he might get 5 or 6 first-round picks in the deal if that comes to fruition in the next couple of days before the trade deadline. So Jaren Jackson Jr. now, him and Lauri Markkanen, 2 best players on this Utah Jazz team. And Jackson, once again, he was having a good season for this Memphis Grizzlies team. We know rebounding's been a problem throughout his career, but everything else, one of the better offensive players in the league. He's going to get you 20 a game about. So on the year, 19.2 points a game, 5.8 boards, 1.9 assists, 1 steal, 1.5 blocks, 1.8 threes, and 47% from the field. So he's easily 4 or 5 cat type of player in fantasy basketball. And I think the points per game could go up a little bit. Obviously, he's not playing with John Morant, who took a lot of shots, and he most likely will be traded now from this Memphis Grizzlies team. And obviously, they're rebuilding. But Jaren Jackson, he could do a little bit of everything, and one of the better players in fantasy basketball once again overall this season. And I think his numbers could go up just a little bit for this Utah Jazz team. Now that John Conker, he was a throw-in in the deal was Conker to make the money work. And this season, not doing anything. 3.2 points, 0.1 boards, 1.3 assists to steal, 52% from the field. So at this point, he's a guy to the back end of your bench. He's not going to do much, obviously, for fantasy basketball. And even for this Utah Jazz team, he's not going to play much as well. Jock Landale, he's another player I could see bought out. He's a veteran in the league. I could see him go with a contender is Landale for the remainder of the season. He's not really a player that's going to have fantasy value as Jock Landale as well. So he's just a throw-in in this trade. Like I said, a lot of throw-in pieces, where the main pieces were obviously Jaren Jackson, Clayton Jr., and the 3 firsts in this deal. So, like I said, I think Landale, he could be bought out by this Jazz team. And Vince Williams Jr., we've seen some flashes from him a couple seasons ago when this whole Grizzly team was out with injury. And I think actually he'll stay with the Jazz, and he's a little intriguing where he could score the basketball off the bench. 8 points a game, 4 boards, 4.4 assists, 1.4 threes, and for 35% from the field. It's his problem shooting percentage and his shot selection, but as a young player on a cheap contract, I think he'll stay with this Jazz team, even though I don't think he'll see the court much. And to Memphis, they're rebuilding, like I said, and you get Walter Clayton Jr., who was a first-round pick this season, and he didn't do much with this Jazz team. 6.8 points a game, 2 rebounds, 3.2 assists, a 3, 39% from the field. So in terms of fantasy basketball, he's someone to keep an eye on, I think, is Clayton Jr., because he's going to be getting a lot of minutes now, where this team's rebuilding and more trades are possibly on the way. Getting rid of a John Morant and what other contracts they want to get off the books is this Memphis Grizzlies team. So Clayton Jr., right now I wouldn't run to the waiver wire and get him, but like I said, he's definitely someone to keep an eye on the waiver wire is Clayton Jr., even in dynasty leagues, to get on your team. Kyle Anderson, I think he's going to be bought out. He'll go to a contender. He's a veteran, Kyle Anderson. We know he's a guy that can play some defense, hit the 3 ball a little bit. So I believe he'll be bought out from this Memphis Grizzlies team and go to a contender. Taylor Hendricks, he's had some flashes and some fantasy value on and off last season, is Taylor Hendricks. And he's another player like Clayton Jr. that's going to get opportunity for this Memphis Grizzlies team. Only his second season in the NBA. And this year he didn't do much, 4.9 points a game, 3 boards, 45% from the field. So like I said, Hendricks, we saw last season he got some run with his injuries over there for this Utah Jazz team. And now I think he could get some run once again for this Memphis Grizzlies team, where they're in tank mode for the remainder of the season. They're going to evaluate what these young players could do. And definitely Taylor Hendricks is one of them and someone to keep an eye on. But like I said, it wouldn't be surprising to me if he's someone that doesn't have fantasy value this season. And after Georges Niang, he's another buyout candidate, I believe, is the veteran shooter, is Niang. We know he's had some value in the past, but this season, he hasn't played all season long with the foot injury, and there's no timetable for his return, even though, like I said, I think he'll be waived. And if he does come back this season by chance, is Niang, then he'll sign on as a three-point specialist for a contender. But like I said, in terms of fantasy basketball, the only guys I'm intrigued with, obviously, are Jaren Jackson Jr., Walter Clayton Jr., and Taylor Hendricks in this deal. This trade pretty much for this Memphis Grizzlies team was to get some draft picks and get two young players like a Clayton Jr. and Taylor Hendricks, where Kyle Anderson and Georgie Zhang were throw-ins to match the money up in this deal. So Jaren Jackson Jr., big trade chip, and a lot of rumors entering this trade deadline. Traded to the Utah Jazz, and we'll see if this Jazz team next season could definitely turn things around. They got a pretty solid roster now for the remainder of this season and obviously entering 2027 and beyond.